Hello and welcome back. Our next session is on something very important and something that we have done a lot of and we continue to do, and something that keeps on changing and we need to keep on updating ourselves with. What am I talking about? I'm talking about pronunciation. Pronunciation is something that I'm sure all of you have also seen and over time learned. It has changed. A word that we knew how to pronounce correctly maybe 10 years ago or maybe 20 years ago has now changed its pronunciation and is now being said differently. So pronunciation in English is like that. English pronunciation is a very living part of the language. It keeps changing because new words keep adding themselves to the language. And of course, because of regional influences and regional variations in the language and how it's spoken, pronunciation keeps on changing. But for you and me, and what we are looking at here is getting to one basic standard of pronunciation, which means that more or less the pronunciation should be correct. Of course, regional differences in pronunciation will always remain. Those we keep in mind. But these are general pronunciation patterns, general pronunciation rules that we will look at once more, some new ones that have been added, some recaps that we are doing, just to make sure that all the pronunciation patterns are in place. You see, this session has been put together after getting feedback from all the teachers all across the state who wrote to us saying that they had maybe some problems or maybe they wanted a few different parts of the pronunciation patterns stressed. So this session is looking at all the feedback that we've got from you. Let's just look at what pronunciation is. Now, we said English is not phonetic. What is phonetic? Phonetic means it's not just how things are written, you speak exactly that way. It's not that. Always remember that English is not phonetic. That means we do not always say a word the same way we spell it. Some words can have the same spelling but different pronunciation. For example, R-E-A-D, the word read. I like to read. Yes, and of course the same one, R-E-A-D, in the past tense. I read the book. Yes, or I read the book. I am reading the book. So it depends on exactly how it's written, what tense we are using, and in what context we are speaking. Some words have different spelling but the same pronunciation. For example, I am wearing a red dress, R-E-D, and I read the book yesterday, R-E-A-D. So two different spellings but the same pronunciation. Listen and learn pronunciation. Listen to English news every day. You see, that's what I generally do to keep up to date with the latest pronunciation. Is I listen to the BBC news and take a note at what the standard pronunciation at the moment is, because that's what we are trying to follow here. Now, the first tip that I would like to give you here is do not confuse pronunciation of words with their spellings. These are of course not just for you teachers, it's also something that you need to give to your students, these tips, because I'm sure all of you know this, but it's something that we can give and impart to our students. For example, if you do not need to confuse the pronunciation of words with their spelling, through, T-H-R-E-W, and T-H-R-O-U-G-H, through and through, although spelled differently, are pronounced the same way. Through, he threw the paper, and T-H-R-O-U-G-H, he went through with his plan. Through and through. So what I generally do is whenever I take a look at these pronunciation patterns, I asked my students to get me words which have two different spellings but sound the same to them. Give them this activity maybe a day in advance, not too long before a day, just a day in advance, and ask them to get words for the next day. And you will see some of them will get maybe one or two words and some of them will get a long list of words, which sometimes is also eye-opening for me. So remember, do not confuse pronunciation of words with the spelling. We've done THREW and THROUGH, through. The second tip that we have is also identical letters or letter clusters in words do not always produce the same sound. As in OUGH in though and THROUGH in through. So it's not that OUGH always will give you the O sound. Yes, though he had the money, he could not buy the ring. Though. And through, as in oo, is pronounced differently. Through. He went through with his plans. So OUGH being the cluster of letters that are pronounced differently in THOUGH and THROUGH. Though and through. There are a few more things to remember. The first thing that I always tell students is imagine a sound before you say it. And as soon as I tell that to my students, they're like, how can you imagine a sound? What's a sound in an image? Now visualize the mouth movement is what I tell them, and the tongue placement. Think of how similar words are pronounced. Okay, so we've done the tongue movement, we've done open mouth, closed mouth, we've done all this earlier when we did sounds and pronunciation. So tell the students that whenever they encounter a new word, try and make them visualize what the sound might be like, where my lips would be, how my tongue would be placed, what will be the articulators. Okay? Listen and imitate the pronunciation. For example, DEVELOP, 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 like we did today, psychiatrist. You heard a new word, the word that you've heard many times, but maybe a different pronunciation for it. Psychiatrist, DEVELOP, and not develop, but develop, develop. Yes? Now all these things only happen once you hear the pronunciation. Remember to hear for the correct pronunciation and put that into your own pronouncing scheme. Then we have pace, tone and pauses are three very important aspects of speech. Now pace and tone, as we did earlier, is a very important part, because if I go slow or if I go too fast, both have nearly the same impact on speech, as in no one understands what I'm trying to say. For example, if I start to speak like this, what happens? What happens when I speak like this? Don't worry, nothing's wrong. What happens? One, it gives you the impression that I don't know what I'm thinking of, because I'm taking too much time to think of what my word has to be. It gives you an impression as though I'm not sure, or maybe I don't even know, and I'm not a master of the topic that I'm trying to speak about, which is not the impression that you want to give, or anyone who wants to give. So pace is very important. Now tone in how I speak. If I was to say all of this information that I've given you in a tone that is maybe sad or boring or low, even you wouldn't be interested in hearing it. So tone has to of course go up and down with the emphasis that you need to lay on a particular word. And of course pauses at the right places. Generally wherever there would be a comma in punctuation or a full stop, we need to give pauses. And sometimes you give a pause just for dramatic effect, like listen, I'm talking to you. That little pause there just gets you a little more dramatic effect. And the aim is clarity in speech, for which we need to curb regional accent and speak neutral English. Practice is very, very important. I don't know how many times we can stress this enough, that we need to first listen every day. It has to be an everyday practice of listening to standard good English, and standard good English is at the BBC on television, also on the radio, the BBC radio. Everyone has internet on their phones nowadays, so it's not even something that we need to go too far to listen to it. So nowadays it's not too easy to say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't listen to it, I don't have a television, or I don't have an internet connection, because everyone, someone, your friend, your family, your neighbor, someone will have it. And if you really do want to change, there is nothing stopping you. So make sure your students don't give you some sort of excuses like this, that, oh, I don't have BBC at home, we have not subscribed to it at the on my television. Yes, so make sure you get the students to listen to the BBC every day for half an hour. Get them to practice, get them to listen to new words. In the beginning, I always tell students to get me words that they know, okay, words that they know, that they hear, but the announcer on TV or the newsreader said differently. Okay, so make sure they get you those words every day, and then it becomes a habit. And you will see, when students start listening to good English, not just in your class, but also on television every day for half an hour, the language will keep on changing, because language, as we said many times, begins by listening and is then reproduced. The same sound is reproduced that you hear. So make sure your students are listening to good English sounds every day. And as we say, practice is very important. Now there's a pronunciation glossary that we have. I hope all of you have downloaded and printed this for yourself. It's something that we, in the coming days and in the coming months, when we do more sessions, we will use a lot, and something that you as teachers can use all the time to get the correct pronunciation of a word. So make sure your students also know this glossary and are familiar with these words. The first one is, of course, airflow. Airflow is the flow or passage of air out of the mouth. Like we did in today's session, we did fur, yes, fur, and the airflow is something that we spoke about there. So aspiration. Aspiration is a small explosion of air when you make a sound. Yes, like we said, the aspirated per, the P, the written P. That's something that we need to remember. Aspiration, a small explosion of air. Auditory is hearing related. Clusters, we did those today as well. Blended sounds, two or more sounds put together to make a single sound. Clusters or blends, that's what clusters are. Those are blends. Spr, scr, screen, sprint, those are clusters as well. Curl, a position of the tongue where the tongue is shaped in a curve, not a flat. Like I said, if this is your tongue and this is the roof of your mouth, and if your tongue curls up a bit, that's a curl. Yes. Flatten, position of the tongue where the tongue is flat and not round. We all know that, like in Glide or slide, move the tongue as you say the sound. You have to move the tongue as you say the sound. For example, the, T-H-E, the. What's happening here? The tongue is between the teeth, and it's also moving back while the sound is being produced. The. Okay? The. Hard palate. Hard part of the roof of the mouth is the hard palate. Intonation. Now intonation, please remember and listen how I say the word. It's not intonation, it's intonation. Intonation is the force with which a certain part of the word is spoken, is intonation. And we said there were some patterns that we had done, like the part before the shin gets the stress, like intonation. Okay. Lengthen the sound, make the sound longer. You see, these are words, this glossary is something that you as teachers need to make sure your students know, not that they learn it by heart, because that has no meaning. What we're trying to do is, so that when you correct the sound, and when you say lengthen the sound, curl the tongue, slide, glide the tongue, they know what you mean. Not that these terms are then strangely new or unfamiliar to them. The next one is lips spread. Open or pull back in sounds. Like we had done E. What did we do? The lips go to the side to say E. Yes? Or. The lips move apart and make an oblong to say or. That's the lip spread. Pitch. Amount of height or depth of a sound is a pitch. Please remember, I keep saying it again, pitch and volume are two different things. This is pitch, this is pitch, this is pitch, this is pitch. The volume remains the same. My pitch goes higher or pitch goes lower. Yes, it's nothing to do with the volume. Volume or volume, those are two different things. Yes, so pitch is the amount of height or depth of a sound and not of the volume. Pressed lips, top and bottom lips touching, like the sound is the lips are touching, which means pressed lips. Protruded lips is rounded lips pushed out. Ooh, ooh, like we did for W, the written W at the initial position. What, why, which, when. Yes? Shorten sound. To make a sound shorter, sometimes a sound is being lengthened where it shouldn't be lengthened. Tap, to touch quickly. Yes? Teeth ridge, the hard area directly behind your top front teeth, where we get the very important t sound from. T, t. The tip of the tongue behind the top teeth. Yes, that gives us, that's a teeth ridge. Top of the mouth, roof of the mouth, area of the roof ridge, hard palate and the soft palate. That's the top of the mouth or the roof of the mouth. A voiced consonant, the vocal cords vibrate. I'm sure we know which ones those are. Unvoiced or voiceless consonants, the vocal cords do not vibrate. Visual is seeing, not hearing, of course. Now, we have the entire pronunciation glossary here that we've done. A few more things to remember. Like we said, imagine a sound before you say it. Visualize the mouth movement and the tongue placement. Listen and imitate the sound and the pronunciation, like develop and not dwelp. Pace, tone and pauses are three very important aspects of speech. The aim is clarity in speech, for which we need to curb regional accent and speak neutral English. Practice is very, very important. That's what we've said. You see, these are pronunciation tips that we need to always remember. We said O-U-G-H and T-R-O-U-G-H, as in though he had the money he could not buy the ring, and through, as in oo, is pronounced differently. I'm sure there are many more that you also have in your list that can be written in the same way, but is pronounced differently, or written differently but pronounced in the same way, like we did in through and through, T-H-R-E-W and T-H-R-O-U-G-H, written differently but pronounced the same way. Yes, he threw the paper, he went through with his plan. Yes, do not confuse pronunciation of the words with their spellings. Excellent. And of course we said that English is not a phonetic language, means it's not spoken the way it's written. I like to read, I read the book, I'm wearing a red dress. Read, read and read, three of the same pronunciations, the same way that it's spoken, but it is pronounced differently. It's written differently. The pronunciation is the same. I like to read, I read the book, I'm wearing a red dress. I read the book yesterday. So read, read and read, pronounced the same way, written in three different ways. Yes? So pronunciation, as we have said, is something that we need to always keep up to date with. How does one do that? What are the patterns that we look at? Now pronunciation, what happens is, some patterns always remain the same. For example, an OUGH will always, as we've seen, though will always remain though. Basic words remain the same. Some words keep changing their pronunciation, which we need to keep up to date. Like sometimes the name of a place, they change the name of, like Madras became Chennai. So of course those things of course need to be up to date with us, and we need to remember that these things are something that will carry on changing right through our lives all the time. Now when we said imagine a sound before you say it, it meant that you need to remember how the mouth is being formed, how the lips move, where the tongue is placed, and how everything is being put together to give the correct pronunciation. The pronunciation glossary is something that we have done earlier, and we will carry on now with conversation skills. Focus on tenses. Yes, we will take a 2-minute break and we will come back and do conversation skills and focus on tenses. We'll take a 2-minute break. We'll take a 2-minute break. So, we will now look at everything that we've done till today, pronunciation, sounds, all of that coming together in what this entire focus is on, and that is that we should be able to converse. I have my colleague here, and she and I will converse. We'll look at this conversation that we have, which is a daily routine conversation, and what I would like you to do is take a note of this conversation, see how we are interacting, how we are keeping the conversation flowing. Because what happens sometimes in conversations is that I ask a question or someone asks a question and all you get is a one-word answer, and that puts an end to the conversation and it doesn't flow. In the following conversations that we have, you will be able to see how a conversation keeps flowing, how one question leads to the other, and of course giving the correct response also makes the other person give a correct response back and of course ask you another question. This is not just about listening and enjoying, of course that is something that we all should do as well, but it is also about learning, practicing, and make sure that we keep everything in mind. Please remember the pronunciations, the sounds, intonation, pace, pitch, volume, all of that. It all comes together in a conversation. The conversation sentences will be on your screen, so you will be able to listen, and of course I'm sure you've downloaded them and are in your workbook already. The first conversation we have is a daily routine, small talk between two neighbors. Okay? I will be in this conversation Mr. Sharma, and my colleague here will take the role of Mr. Goel here. Okay? So let's begin. Should we? Okay.
Yeah. Right. So what's your usual day like? You always seem so busy.
So what is happening here? Mr. Goel is asking me about, we are having two people are having a conversation with a very normal thing. So Mr. Goel asks, what's your usual day like? And I, Mr. Sharma, will reply, well, I usually get up around 5 a.m. and work on the computer until 6 a.m.
Why do you get up so early?
Why do you get up so early? Well, I have to leave home at 20 to 7 so that I can catch a bus at 7 o'clock. It takes me about 20 minutes to walk to the bus stop from my house.
I see. And what time do you get to work?
My bus takes about an hour to get there, but it stops right in front of my office.
That's nice. And what time do you get off work?
Around 5 o'clock. Then we have tea around 6:30, and my wife and I play with the kids until dinner at 8 or so.
I see. So when do you read? I remember you telling me that you read a lot.
Well, my wife and I often watch TV or talk until 10 o'clock. She sleeps more than I do, so I often read in the early hours of the morning. I usually sleep at around 12.
And you then get up at 5 a.m.?
Yes, it's important to live a balanced life. I enjoy what I do, but you have to set aside time for family and yourself.
I agree with you.
But I think my wife has the toughest job. She teaches in a school and takes care of our family. The kitchen, the garden, buying groceries, keeping an eye on the kids.
That's two full-time jobs. How does Mrs. Sharma manage?
She enjoys what she does.
Well, you're busy but a lucky man.
Yes. So what's happening in this conversation? If we look at this conversation right at the beginning, my colleague here asked me, what's your usual day like? You always seem so busy. Now, this is something that will make you give two responses. What's your usual day like will make the other person respond, giving a description of the usual day. Like I did, I said, well, I usually get up around 5 a.m. and work on the computer until 6 a.m. The second part was, you always seem so busy, meaning that at any time of the day, the person seemed busy. Now this automatically leads you to the next question. Why do you get up so early? You know, she asked me, why do you get up so early? Because I had said, I get up around 5 a.m. Now, obviously, if someone wakes up at 5 a.m., maybe you will ask, why do you get up so early? And I replied, I have to leave home at 20 to 7. Please remember, we had done telling the time as well at quarter past, quarter to, 22, 20 past. This is when it all comes into practice as well. Make sure these kind of conversations is something that you do with your students so that they can carry on practicing not just numbers, not just pronunciation, but also telling the time in the format that we have practiced. So, I have to leave home at 20 to 7 so that I can catch a bus at 7 o'clock. It takes me about 20 minutes to walk to the bus stop from my house. And then she said,
I see. And what time do you get to work?
Exactly. So if I have just said, if I have only given that much information, that I leave at about 20 to 7, it takes me 20 minutes to walk, and I get to the bus stop at 7, which will make her ask me more questions. So when you are interacting, leave some information out so that the other person, if the other person is interested and wants to make conversation with you, will call and ask you some more. Like she said, so, I see, what time do you get to work? And I said, my bus takes about an hour to get there, but it stops right in front of my office. So, if I take the bus at 7 o'clock, at 8 o'clock is when I'm at work. And she replied,
That's nice.
Now what is that? That's nice, isn't?
Appreciation.
It's an appreciation. She's appreciating something that, oh wow, because I have just said it stops right in front of my office. So make sure you just don't listen to the information, you also react to the information. If something is good, you should say, oh, that's nice. Like she had said earlier, I see. Now these are little bits of conversation that you can use to spruce up the conversation. Spruce is a word that we had done earlier today, to make your entire vocabulary a little better. I see. That's nice.
Maybe
Okay.
just express yourself a little more.
Exactly. To express yourself a little more, you say, I see. Oh, that's nice. Okay? And then she asked me, and what time do you get off work? Now, that's another better way to say, what time do you finish work? Because maybe your work's not really finished. But that's when you get off work. Okay? So, please remember, it's a better expression to say, when do you get off work? And I replied, around 5 o'clock. Then we have tea around 6:30, and my wife and I play with the kids around until dinner, till 8 o'clock or so. Yes? So now she knows that I have dinner and we play with the kids, we have tea at 6:30 and all of that. And so she said again,
I see.
I see, as an exclamation. I see. Oh, that's nice.
So, when do you read? I remember you telling me that you read a lot.
Okay, so now what has happened is she's gone back to an earlier conversation that she had with me, and she said, I remember you telling me that I read a lot. So, when do you read? because otherwise it would seem an odd question. I see, so when do you read? If I hadn't told her, or I hadn't had any conversation earlier where I had said that I like to read, this would seem a very odd question.
Yeah.
So here what she has done is, so that it doesn't seem odd and out of place, linked it to an earlier conversation. Had you not had an earlier conversation, and had she wanted to ask me if I read or not, how could you have asked me?
It would have looked really dumb, actually.
Yes, so
Out of place?
out of place. So if she wanted to know if I read or not, she could have asked me about my hobbies. Do you have any hobbies? Do you like to read? That would be a better way to put it. But since she knows, and I had already told her I like to read a lot, she's asked me, I see, so when do you read? And I replied, well, my wife and I often watch TV or talk until 10. She sleeps more than I do, so I often read in the early hours of the morning. I usually sleep at around 12, which is midnight.
And then you get up at 5 a.m.?
So, now this has seemed something strange to her, that I only sleep for 5 hours, that I read and then I go to sleep at 12, at midnight, and then at 5 I'm up already. So she says, and then you get up at 5 a.m.?
Hardly like 7 hours of sleep.
Of sleep or something like that. So what's happening here? She has raised her pitch. The pitch has gone higher to show that she's explaining, she's trying to show her surprise at this. Then you get up at 5 a.m. Notice the pitch going up. Okay? And I reply, yes, it's important to live a balanced life. I enjoy what I do, but you have to set aside time for family and yourself.
I agree with you.
So she has replied to that saying, yes, I agree with you. And I say, but I think my wife has the toughest job. She teaches in a school and takes care of our family, the kitchen, the garden, buying groceries, keeping an eye on the kids, which I'm sure most of you also know exactly. I'm sure all of you do all of these things. Taking care of family, the kitchen, the garden if you have that, buying groceries, keeping an eye on the kids, teaching in a school. We do all of that as well. Yes? And she has replied to that saying,
that's 2 full-time jobs. How does Mrs. Sharma manage?
That is really 2 full-time jobs. How does Mrs. Sharma manage? I'm sure I don't need to give you the answer. I'm sure all of you teachers know how you manage 2 full-time jobs here. Because sometimes 1 job is more than enough. Teachers, and especially mothers who are teachers, or ladies who are teachers as well, are juggling 2 jobs at the same time. I remember someone very close to me who used to also wake up nearly at 4 in the morning because she would cook before leaving for her office or work, and she was a teacher as well. She would cook, make sure that children were fed, giving them and send them to school, and then she would go to teach in her school. She'd come back and cook as well and wash the dishes, and also of course do all the other homework. It's 2 full-time job that most of the women in India especially are taking on themselves. Well, she enjoys what she does.
Well, you're a busy but a lucky man.
So she said, well, you're a busy but a lucky man. Yes, this is how a conversation should flow. This is how reactions should be given. Good ones, bad ones. She was surprised when I told her that I sleep at 12 and then I wake up at 5 and then you get up at 5 a.m. So it's not that she was always agreeing with me. In a conversation, you can show that you don't agree with some things and you agree with some things. Some things you might be surprised at, and some things might come as new or a surprise factor to you. So remember, that's how a conversation should be flowing. Now, we have a few questions about the conversation that we just had. You need to choose the correct option.
Mr. Sharma wakes up at 5 and works on the computer till 6 o'clock.
So here we have option of wake up or wakes up, work or works. What is happening here? What are we looking at? We are looking at the subject and verb agreement. Yes, that's what we are looking at. We are looking at subject-verb agreement. Mr. Sharma wakes up at 5 and works on the computer till 6 o'clock.
It would be...
If you read the correct sentence with the correct option, please.
All right. Mr. Sharma wakes up at 5 and works on the computer till 6 o'clock.
Excellent. So if one of the teachers in each of the schools, if you could read the correct sentence as well, please. Anyone? Good. That's good, yes. Mr. Sharma wakes up at 5 and works on the computer till 6 o'clock. The next one is?
He have to leave home at 20 to 7 so that he can catches a bus at 7 o'clock.
Yes. The options here are leave, has to leave or have to leave, and can catch or catches. So here the correct sentence would be?
He has to leave home at 20 to 7 so that he can catch a bus at 7 o'clock.
Yes. He has to leave home at 20 to 7 so that he can catch a bus at 7 o'clock. Okay, now if a teacher in the school, one of you, the next teacher, could read the correct sentence, please. Anyone? Perfect. Good. Third sentence.
He gets off work round 5 o'clock and goes home to his family.
He gets off work around 5 o'clock and goes home to his family. The correct sentence is?
He gets off work around 5 o'clock and goes home to his family.
Perfect. So he gets off work around 5 o'clock and goes home to his family. If one teacher, if you could read the sentence, please. Good. Next sentence.
He eats dinner with his family at around 8.
He eats dinner with his family at around 8. That's a simple one. The correct is?
He eats dinner with his family at around 8.
He eats dinner with his family at around 8. Okay. Next sentence, please.
Before dinner, Mr. and Mrs. Sharma plays with their kids until 8 or so.
Yes. Before dinner, Mr. and Mrs. Sharma plays with their kids until 8 or so. Yes?
Before dinner, Mr. and Mrs. Sharma play with their kids until 8 or so.
Yes. Before dinner, Mr. and Mrs. Sharma play with their kids until 8 or so.
Mr. Sharma reads at night.
Now, Mr. Sharma reads at night. Yes. We can see some teachers in Civil Line, Patiala. The teachers in Civil Line, Patiala, can you hear us? Can you see us? Teachers in Civil Line, Patiala.
I think they're not able to hear us.
Okay, wonderful. So, let's carry on with the next sentence.
He says, I think my wife have the toughest job. She teaches in a school and takes care of our family.
He says, I think my wife has or have the toughest job. She teaches in a school and takes care of our family.
He says, I think my wife has the toughest job. She teaches in a school and takes care of our family.
Okay, so that's the correct sentence there. He says, I think my wife has the toughest job. She teaches in a school and takes care of our family. Okay? If one teacher could say it, please. We are looking at GSSS PAO in Ludhiana. The teachers, can you see us? Can you hear us? If you can, if you could wave your hand. GSSS PAU Ludhiana. Can you see us? Yes. Hello. It's good to interact. So, I hope you're enjoying the session and are making the most of the conversation skills as well. Yes? Okay. So,
The last sentence.
yes. The last sentence is,
We learns that Mrs. Sharma enjoys cooking, gardening and looking after the children.
yes. So, we learns that Mrs. Sharma enjoys cooking, gardening and looking after the children. Here, the correct sentence would be what?
We learn that Mrs. Sharma enjoys cooking, gardening and looking after the children.
Yes, we learn that Mrs. Sharma enjoys cooking, gardening and looking after the children.
Correct.
Yes? Excellent. So what do you think? Mr. Sharma gets to work at 8 o'clock and gets off work at 5 o'clock. Is Mr. Sharma an entrepreneur or a salaried employee? Now what's an entrepreneur?
A person who has his own business.
Who has his own business. Please remember the pronunciation and listen to the pronunciation of this word. Entrepreneur.
Entrepreneur.
Yes, entrepreneur is or a salaried person. So, what do you think? If a person goes to work at 8 o'clock and gets off work at 5 o'clock, is he entrepreneur or a salaried?
He's a salaried employee.
He's a salaried employee. Yes. So these are some simple things that you can ask a person in a conversation as well. We have the second conversation, which is at Kaziranga. Now, Kaziranga is a national park in Assam, and so this is about a conversation about Kaziranga that we have. Yes.
Okay.
GSSS PAU Ludhiana. Can you see the screen and do you have the conversation with you downloaded? Okay. Yes. The lady at the back has waved at us. Excellent. Perfect. Good. Thank you. So in this conversation,
Start.
yes, you can start. Yes.
That's a beautiful decoration piece. A hippo. Where did you get that from?
Actually, it's a rhino. It's a memento from my last vacation.
Really? Tell me about your last vacation.
Oh, I had gone to visit a friend in Guwahati. We took a 2-day trip to Kaziranga National Park in Assam.
What is the park like?
It's a wildlife sanctuary spread over 450 miles. It's the home of the one-horned rhino, the only place in the world where they are found.
Did you actually see any rhinos?
Of course, we actually rode on elephants into the tall grass. It was quite a unique experience.
How tall was the grass?
It is called elephant grass. It was at least 7 or 8 feet high, higher in places. At times, the smaller elephants were hidden in the grass.
How did you manage to see the rhino? They're not as tall as elephants, are they?
No, they're not. There were clearings near water sources. The rhinos were feeding in these spots. The elephants loaded with tourists went within 20 feet of the rhinos.
Couldn't they go closer?
They were not too happy to go even that close. As we neared the rhinos, the elephants positioned themselves in an arrow-shaped formation with a tusker in the lead. Rhinos are fierce animals, you know.
Now I know.
Exactly. So this was a conversation where we were talking about a national park at Kaziranga. Yes? Now this can be anywhere. This could be a conversation in any place of the... And you could substitute it with anything. What is the purpose of this conversation? Here, all we're looking at is place names, how we talk about it, how do we find out information. Here, it's about finding information. How did it start? She looked at a piece, a decoration piece, and started a conversation. This also gives you a sort of hint that a conversation can be started in many different ways, and anything can start a conversation. So she said,
"That's a beautiful decoration piece, a hippo. Where did you get that from?"
I said, "Oh, actually it's a rhino. It's a memento from my last vacation." Memento, a small decoration piece, is something that you keep as a remembrance. Yes, and she said,
"Really? Tell me about your last vacation."
Now she was interested in knowing about my vacation because I had mentioned it, and so the conversation flowed from a little memento that she saw to now on to my last vacation. And I said, "Oh, I had gone to visit a friend in Guwahati. We took a 2-day trip to Kaziranga National Park in Assam."
What is the park like?
Yeah. Now what has happened is I gave her information where I went, who I went with, or who I went to visit. And so if she asked me about my friend, it would be too personal, because that's something that I have just by the way said. The only thing that she can ask me is about the national park. So make sure when you ask questions or in a conversation, you don't ask too personal a question. Exactly. So she asked me, "What's the park like?" Yes, and I said it's a wildlife sanctuary spread over 450 miles. It's the home of the one-horned rhino, the only place in the world where they are found. Now that's something special about the Kaziranga National Park that I have mentioned here. And so she asked,
"Did you actually see any rhinos?"
Because it sometimes does happen that if you go to a place and you don't really see a rhino. Yes, so I said, of course, we actually rode on elephants into the tall grass. It was quite a unique experience.
I also believe that you need to be a little more inquisitive to ask these questions.
Inquisitive, yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. I think she said it very well here, that you need to be inquisitive. Inquisitive meaning you need to
be, wanting to know a little more about stuff. Until you don't know that, you won't be coming up with these questions.
Exactly. So, because in the previous conversation that we have here, the conversation could have just died had she looked at the decoration piece and said, "Oh, it's a hippo," and I said it's a rhino from my last vacation. She could have just said, "Oh, okay," and it could have died. That's where the conversation would have stopped. But she was a bit inquisitive. She asked further and further. Now that's how a conversation flows. Most of the time we've got feedback from the teachers who said conversation stops. We don't know how to say. We need to know more vocabulary. We need to know more words. It's not about vocabulary. It's not about words. Now here what has happened is most of the words we know. There are no new words here. The only thing that's happening here is that we are listening to different words. We are listening to what the person is saying and asking different questions. Like she said, you need to be a little inquisitive. So, like I said, that we rode into the tall grass, and she said,
How tall was the grass?
How tall was the grass? Now she could have just said, "Oh, okay, you went on an elephant into the grass. Did you see some rhinos?" I said, "Yes." So she asked me another question. Only if you keep asking questions will you keep getting more and more information. And the more information you get, the more questions you'll have to ask or want to ask, and so the conversation will flow. And I said, it's called elephant grass. I gave her some more information about the grass. It was at least 7 or 8 feet high, higher in some places. At times, the smaller elephants were hidden in the grass.
How did you manage to see the rhino? They're not as tall as elephants are they?
No, they're not. There were clearings near water sources. The rhinos were feeding in these spots. The elephants, loaded with tourists, went within 20 feet of the rhinos. Okay?
Couldn't they go closer?
I'm like, they were not too happy to go even that close. As we neared the rhinos, the elephants positioned themselves in an arrow-shaped formation with a tusker in the lead. A tusker is nothing else but an elephant with the elephant teeth in front of it. Yes. Rhinos are fierce animals,
Now I know.
You see, And so what has happened is, I've told her rhinos are really fierce animals. She could have just said, oh, okay. She says, now I know, which is a nice way to
express yourself,
Exactly.
maybe your feelings.
Exactly.
Right.
She's saying, now I know, meaning that even if she knew earlier, but she now knows even clearer.
Yeah.
Yes, that rhinos are fierce animals. Maybe sometimes you don't know rhinos are fierce animals. You can even say that, oh, I didn't know that. A different way to say something. Now, let us note the speaker uses a present tense while giving general information. Yes, tense is very, very important in conversation to get the tenses correct.
It's a wildlife sanctuary spread over 450 miles. It's the home of one horned rhino, the only place in the world where they are found.
But she narrates her experiences in the past tense. Like,
we actually rode on elephants into the tall grass. It was a unique experience.
yes. So when you're talking about an experience, you need to talk about an experience that has happened to you. You will always use the past tense. But when you're giving information, general information about that experience, even if it's about the experience, you will always use the present tense. These are small tips on conversation skills that you need to remember. You see, present tense while giving information, past tense while talking about the experience. Yes, we actually rode on elephants. She's talking about in the past tense. Like we said, did you know?
Rhino is only a short form or a nickname for the rhinoceros. Similarly, hippo is a short form for hippopotamus.
Yes, a rhino is a short form for a rhinoceros, and a hippo for a hippopotamus. So, correct the following sentences.
We take a vacation to Kashmir last year.
We take a vacation to Kashmir last year.
Kashmir.
Kashmir was a beautiful valley.
We had a visit Srinagar, Gulmarg and Gurez.
We had visit Srinagar, Gulmarg and Gurez. 3 places in the Jammu and Kashmir state. Srinagar, Gulmarg and Gurez.
The Wooler Lake was the largest lake in the valley.
The Wooler Lake was the largest lake in the valley.
The Jhelum flow out of valley at Baramulla.
The Jhelum flow out of the valley at Baramulla.
We need to correct.
Yes. So, the teachers at PAU, Ludhiana, maybe if you could correct one of the sentences, each of you could one by one correct the sentences. The first one, we take a vacation to Kashmir last year. What would be the correct one?
Can't hear.
Anyone? Yes, we took a vacation to Kashmir last year because we are talking about last year. So, of course, it will be the past tense. The next lady, if the next teacher could do the next sentence. Kashmir was a beautiful valley. So, yeah. Okay. Kashmir was a beautiful valley. We won't say was. It's still, hopefully, it is still a beautiful valley. So we will carry on with that. Kashmir is a beautiful valley. Yes? Then? Okay. The Wooler Lake was the largest lake in the valley. Again, we will carry on with the Wooler Lake is the largest lake in the valley. Can you hear us? Okay. Yeah, the Jhelum. Yes, the Jhelum flows out of the valley at Baramulla. Flows, because it still does, so we will talk in the present tense. Yes. I hope GSSS PAU Ludhiana, I hope you're enjoying the session. Yes? Thank you so much. Thank you. Next conversation that we have is meeting old friends.
Hi, Preeti.
Good morning, Neetu. Nice to see a bright face on Monday morning.
It was a great day yesterday.
Really? What did you do yesterday?
Well, I woke up late in the morning.
Of course, Sunday is a day to rest.
Indeed. I got out of bed at 11 o'clock. I had 2 cups of tea and wondered what to eat for lunch.
Lunch? That's breakfast and lunch rolled in one. I bet you ate parathas.
I did. I opted for the aloo paranthas with curd and a pat of fresh butter.
And then you lazed in front of the TV?
I watched a really good film on TV, Raincoat. Have you seen this one?
I started watching it one day but found it too boring. I'm surprised that you have liked the film.
Why?
Because it's so slow and somber.
The story is really good. The 2 friends meet after years. Both have fallen on hard times. Both try to hide the fact from each other, but they know each other too well. The film ends with each friend giving the other what little they have themselves. I felt so touched by the story.
You're a sensitive person. And what has made you feel so happy today?
Oh, an old friend dropped in late in the evening. It's so nice to catch up after years.
Exactly. I'm sure most of us know the feeling of catching up with an old friend.
It's
Yes.
a great feeling.
It's a great feeling of catching up with an old friend who comes to visit you after years, or you meet up somewhere after years. So, the conversation started, "Hi Preeti, good morning Neetu. Nice to see a bright face on a Monday morning." Now, that's pay a compliment. If you give a compliment to someone right in the beginning, it starts the conversation.
Brightening up the day or
Yes.
brightening up the conversation.
It starts a conversation on a very good note. So the other person feels good, and so you will feel good as well. Yes? So even if the person is not too cheerful, the person will have to be a little cheerful then. Especially Monday morning, not everyone is that cheerful. I'm sure all us teachers know that as well. Yes? So, it was a great day yesterday.
Really? What did you do yesterday?
Well, I woke up late in the morning. It's always nice to wake up late in the morning after an entire busy, hectic week.
Yeah.
You have 1 or 2 days when you can stay and sleep till late.
Maybe do things your own way and not with the schedule.
Not the schedule that you have to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of course, Sunday is a day of rest.
Indeed, I got out of bed at 11 o'clock. I had 2 cups of tea and wondered what to eat for lunch.
Lunch? That's breakfast. And lunch rolled in one. I bet you ate paranthas.
Now, what is happening here? That I said I woke up very late. I woke up at 11 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so had 2 cups of tea and wondered what to eat for lunch. You can see by the tone. You see also your tone should reflect that laziness, that having time. Yes. So remember, tone is very important in conveying a certain message.
If you won't express yourself, I think the other person won't really understand if you really meant it, or
Exactly.
maybe it really happened. Right?
Exactly. So the tone shows it all. And then when I say what to eat for lunch, she replied, "Lunch? That's breakfast and lunch rolled into one. I bet you ate parathas." So that's a little bit of humor coming in as well. Humor is a very, very good and a wonderful tool for conversation. A small bit like that, that's breakfast and rolled into one, is a bit of humor, goes a long way. And then she made a guess and said,
I did. Opted for aloo paranthas with curd and a pat of fresh butter.
"I did," because I had said, "I bet you ate parathas." She said, "I did. I opted for aloo parathas with curd and a pat of fresh butter." I'm sure all you teachers out there, but some of you, I'm sure are also feeling hungry. Aloo parathas? For anyone? Maybe. I'm sure. Yes. And then you laze in front of the TV.
Mm-hmm. I watched a really good film on TV.
So what is happening here now? She's going to give us a bit of information about something that she watched on TV. And so the conversation can go on about that. She said, "I watched a really good film on TV, Raincoat."
Have you seen this one?
I said I started watching it one day but found it too boring. I'm surprised that you liked the film. You see what's happening here? I didn't agree with that. I don't like what she's saying. So, like we said earlier, you don't have to agree with everything. Yes?
Yes.
And why?
Why? Because it's so slow and somber.
And then she said the story is really good.
Yeah, the story is really good. Two friends meet after years. Both have fallen on hard times. Both try to hide the fact from each other, but they know each other too well. The film ends with each friend giving the other what little they have themselves. I felt so touched by the story.
So, that's how another conversation can go by. We'll take another 2-minute break and we'll come back and continue with the rest of the conversation skills. 2-minute break and we'll be back.